the feeling and it's out there growing.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad you could join us today. I'm Jim Boge, and you're listening to Music in My Shoes. I'm thrilled to be here, and yes, that was Vic Thrill. Kicking off episode 2, which I call Pilot Part 2. I'd like to start today's show by thanking everyone who listened to episode 1, especially those of you who reached out to me with your feedback and comments because it is greatly appreciated. Even my mom, who was technically challenged, managed to listen. Thank you, and I love you, Mom. Last episode, I spoke about maybe you'll learn something new or remember something old. Quite a few of you mentioned breaking out old U2 albums or even The Cure. Lots of you are liking the new Libertine single, Run, Run, Run. And yes, John Mayer was in Dead & Company. I got some Chinese food takeout the other night, and I got the fortune cookie, and I'll be honest, most of the time I can't even read what the fortune is because the print is too small. But I decided I was going to get my phone, take a picture, and make it a little bit bigger to see what it said. And my fortune said, "You are heading in the right direction." And I think that's pretty awesome because I hope I am, and I hope we all are together as we go into this journey of Music in My Shoes. I'm going to start off with 45 years ago, the Police came to America. Their first show was at CBGB in New York City. They actually played 2 nights there. And it was the Outlandos D'Amore tour. And while I did not get to see them, I wish that I could have been there to see it. That must have been pretty awesome, the Police there playing. I did get to see the Police on the 1982 and 1983 tours. 1983, because that's 40 years ago, saw them August 18th at Shea Stadium. They had R.E.M. and Joan Jett opening up for them. And when R.E.M. and Joan Jett was on, there was a lot of rain. I remember the bands playing under plastic, but it was still really cool. R.E.M. still wasn't really big. Of course, I had a lot of fun at the show as well as before the show and after the show on the train ride home. That was the night that Sting says he decided it was time that he needed to leave the Police. He figured that it couldn't get any better. I've read many articles. I've seen some TV things that he's done, and he's talked about that being where the Beatles had played. It just was the top of the pops, and he knew that when the tour was over, he would really have to start thinking about leaving the band. That night, one of the songs that they played is my favorite song off the Synchronicity album. It's Murder by Numbers. And if I remember correctly, it wasn't even listed on the album when it originally came out. If you've not listened to it before, it's a really, really good song. Recently, Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin fame sang Stairway to Heaven at a cancer benefit show organized by Andy Taylor of Duran. So what makes this a big deal? What makes this a topic to speak of? Well, I'll tell you. It's the first time in 16 years that Robert Plant has sung Stairway to Heaven live. This story has so many angles. First, originally diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer in 2018, Andy Taylor is taking medication that's extended his life by a few years. That's awesome news. Can't ask for anything more than that. So he has a benefit concert that he does for cancer research each year, and he invited Robert Plant, he invited different musicians to make a background band, and I think that's wonderful. Glad that he can stay with us and still continue to play. So second, I used to listen to Led Zeppelin 4 on 8-track before I had the record. For those of you who do not know what an 8-track tape is, well, that's going to be another episode. We won't talk about that today. It was a way to listen to music very, very back in the day. I would practice playing all the instruments air style, air guitar, air bass, air drums, and do my best Robert Plant impersonation, which was not good, I might add. But I was 12, 13 years old, and it was a lot of fun. Thinking I was Led Zeppelin and just rocking out and rocking away. So the other night, I got in my car and I turned the volume up to 10, and the opening notes of Stairway to Heaven come on, and then I'm singing along with Robert Plant, and then when the drums come on, oh my, I'm at a red light, the people in the car next to me are looking at me, but I don't care, because now Jimmy Page's guitar solo starts, and I'm alternating between air guitar and air drums, and I'm having the time of my life. And simple things like singing, air drumming, air guitaring can be fun, even if you're no longer 12 or 13, as I am not even close to that. Final point I'll make on the topic is Robert Plant last sang it at a Led Zeppelin reunion in 2007, December 2007, that is. It was a year after co-founder and president of Atlantic Records, Ahmet Ertegun, died. He sustained a brain injury after falling at a Rolling Stones concert in New York City. Led Zeppelin performed to honor him for all he had done for the band. Speaking of the Rolling Stones, Paul McCartney plays on a track on the new Rolling Stones album, Hackney Diamonds. He contributes bass to the song Bite My Head Off. It's kind of a turned-up, fuzz-in-your-face bass. It's prominent throughout the song. It's a Rolling Stones take at a punky song, and yes, I'm digging it. And as a matter of fact, Jimmy, have you heard the song at all?
Yeah, I just listened to it yesterday. It's cool. It's a different kind of tune for the Stones, you know?
Yes, especially when they're 80, approaching 80, like to have a song like that, I just love it.
Yeah,
I love that they can do something like that.
And so cool that Paul McCartney, I think Paul McCartney defined what electric bass is. Like, he was the first guy to start playing the bass the way that we think of like cool bass lines, rather than just, instead of an upright bass on Elvis, I'm going to play this electric one. No, Paul made it like a lead instrument in the Beatles. So for him, the guy that's like the godfather of bass, to come out with this bass tone all fuzzed out is super cool.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. It is a great song. I just find myself listening to it over and over and over again, knowing that it is Paul McCartney playing with the Rolling Stones. You kind of wish that they had done this some more. But you know what, Jimmy? A lot of people don't know they actually have played on each other's records before. July of 1967, Paul and John Lennon provided backing vocals for two songs, Dandelion and the song We Love You. Now, if you listen to Dandelion, you can't really tell that they're on there. If you listen to We Love You, you definitely can tell John Lennon is singing the background vocals of that song.
I got to check that out. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and when I was younger, much, much younger, and I'd hear that song, I'd always say, man, that sounds like the Beatles, not knowing that it was. Learned it much later in life. And then returning the favor, back in May 67, Mick Jagger sang backing vocals on the Beatles' Baby You're a Rich Man. You're familiar with that song?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a real good song. I like that. I know it's not a big song that a lot of people know, but it's really a cool song if you just listen to it and so forth. And then June 1967, Mick and Keith Richards, along with Keith Moon, Eric Clapton, and Graham Nash of Crosby, Stills and Nash, they all sang background vocals on All You Need Is Love. So you can actually see that on YouTube. You can see the video, and you can see the different people singing, and it's really cool how they made that song and how they have all these people together. And again, I love stuff like that. I could look that stuff up all day.
Yeah, and it's like they recorded that song in one take. I mean, it's exactly what you hear on the record is what's in the video. They're not lip syncing or anything. It's and that whole part where they start singing "She Loves You" at the end of that song, it almost feels like improv, you know?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I just watched it again just to kind of see if that was how I felt, and it's exactly how I felt. Like, I'm looking at their mouths, and their mouths are, exactly lined up. Everything sounds the way it should. Great job, and, that was technology from back in 1967. That's a long, long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Since we're talking about old albums, I thought we'd revisit some past albums. Start off with the Talking Heads. I know they've been in the news with Stop Making Sense. They've re-released the movie and so forth. That movie was done in December 1983 for the Speaking in Tongues tour. And Speaking in Tongues, 40 years old. Obviously, the first song that, is on the album, everybody knows it. My kids, when they were barely able to speak, knew it, was Burning Down the House. That's just some sort of song that transitions between any age and any genre. People just seem to like that song.
Yeah, it's a great song.
And then, some of the other songs on the album, Making Flippy Floppy, Girlfriend is Better, Swamp, This Must Be the Place. I mean, it's a pretty good album. First time that Brian Eno was not their producer. They kind of produced it on themselves, so it's a little bit different than what they've done before in the past. So, I remember the album. I still have the album. I remember listening to it a ton. For you, Jimmy, like when you were growing up, and what was it like when that album came out?
Yeah, no, Burning Down the House was a radio hit, but it was also, it was an alternative. It was a different kind of song. If you look at what was out on the radio in 1983, there was nothing really that sounded like Burning Down the House.
No, not at all. I agree with you on that for sure. The Talking Heads, they were always different with everything that they did. The big suit that was worn on different tours, as well as in the movie Stop Making Sense. And I believe before they released this movie again, that they did a little promo where they showed David Byrne going to a dry cleaner's looking to pick up the suit because he had put it there and wanted to see if it was still at the location and so forth. But that's a great album. It's a great album to revisit. Definitely some good memories. And then also, I talked about the Stop Making Sense. That album came out in 1984. I think it came out about a year after they recorded, probably October 1984. And like I said, they recorded the album December of 1983. Real good album because it has songs from, their previous albums as well.
Yeah, one thing from a technical standpoint about Stop Making Sense, it was one of the first records that was recorded 100% digitally. So it was an all, like, if you looked at the back of CDs, a lot of times it would say like AAD, meaning it was recorded in analog, it was mixed in analog, and it was mastered to digital for the disc. And this was one of the first records that I ever had that was DDD. They did the whole recording of that live concert to digital recorders, which were at the time like brand new and really expensive.
Yeah, and everything today is digital, right?
Yeah.
It's funny because along the same lines, I actually was going to Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York, and we had to do a paper. I had some sort of English class. I don't remember everything about it, but we had to do a paper on something with the arts, and you were supposed to go to a museum, or you're supposed to do this, something hoity-toity and everything, and I wrote it about Stop Making Sense. I went and saw the movie, and I did a paper on it, and I got a really good grade on it. I was very proud of myself.
Nice.
That I was able to convince the professor that this was art, and that I could communicate it to her as being art, as compared to some of the other things that people did that I think I fell asleep. I got to be honest. Want to move over to the Ramones. Their fourth album came out in 1978, Road to Ruin. I'm going to start with the obvious song, I Want to Be Sedated.
Yeah, classic.
Classic. I mean, you hear that everywhere. Another song that it just goes beyond age. Everybody knows that song and so forth.
It really does, yep.
My favorite Ramones song, and in my top 100 songs of all time, is actually the first song on the album.
I Just Want to Have Something to Do.
I Just Want to Have Something to Do. Yes, it is. I absolutely love that. The louder you put that song, the better that song is. And from the first time I heard it, it's one of those songs, the first time I was just absolutely enamored with it, and it hasn't changed. All these years later, I still love it. It's still in my top 100. And obviously you like it because before I could say anything, you were answering.
Yeah, I love that song. Ramones songs have a lot of little devices in them that you love, and one of them is the chant along, and it's got the weight now that you can shout and put your fist in the air along with. And
did you see me as I was driving here? Because you just described me as I was headed to the studio.
And my band in college, the Violets, used to cover that. That was one of our favorite covers to do.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
That is definitely awesome. Also, some of my favorites on there, I love Needles and Pins. It's a cover, and they do it in the way that the Searchers did it. But if you didn't know, it's actually co-written by Sonny Bono of Sonny and Cher fame, and I don't know if a lot of people know that. But that song, I am a sucker for a song when someone sings it, and they sing it as if it's coming from their heart, that song means everything to them, and it's a real-life experience. And that's the way Needles and Pins comes across to me. Mm-hmm. I feel his pain as he's singing it.
Yeah, I mean, Joey, I think, was like a lovesick guy, He loved pop songs, and he loved, that yearning kind of thing, and he expresses it in that song perfectly.
Yes, I couldn't agree more with you. He is definitely big into the pop songs, and I think of him as a lovesick puppy type guy and so forth. And
yeah, I mean, Johnny stole his girl. Come on, Johnny.
That is true. That is another episode. We won't get in that today, but yes, that is true, and that is probably why he was so lovesick. But some of the other songs that I like I'm Against It. Mm-hmm. I Wanted Everything. Don't Come Close. Mm-hmm. I like them better. The second side I don't like as much as it gets, towards the end of the album and so forth. Your thoughts on the album as a whole? I think She's the One is a great song. That's almost like a Rocket to Russia era song. And Bad Brain's pretty fun. They do a little bit with like a echo and stuff in it. They kind of get a little experimental with the recording, but yeah, it's a good album, and it's got a real hard edge sound. Like, not that the Ramones albums before that didn't have a hard edge, but there was something not quite as abrasive, until this record. This felt like a little bit more like verging towards a metal guitar sound versus like a warm, fuzzy sound. And, right. And yet Needles and Pins was on it.
Yeah. They always had to. But I think every Ramones record has like a complete other direction ballad on it,
Correct. I definitely agree with you. I grew up in New York. We got to hear the Ramones a lot. The Ramones were one of those bands, they would play them on the radio. And I think we got spoiled because we just heard it a lot more than I think most of the country got to hear it. Mm. And that was kind of cool because you just kind of grew up with, oh man, it's the Ramones, it's the Ramones. I remember seeing them in 85, I believe it was, at Nassau Community College, actually, and they pulled up in a flatbed and they played on the grass, of the field and so forth, and it was just really, really cool. I mean, wow. Free show, just come,
What year was that?
I think it was 85. So I Want to Be Sedated reminds me that at every school dance, so where I went to high school, we had school dances, beginning of the year, we had school dances for homecoming, the spring dance, the Christmas dance, the Thanksgiving dance. I'm sure I'm, leaving something out. But I Want to Be Sedated was played at every one of those dances. So I've been looking on Facebook and seen a lot of people who their kids have been going to homecoming and so forth. So homecoming 40 years ago was my senior year. And I remember the whole day. It was a Saturday, and, we had the parade and the homecoming court. They rode in cars around the football field on the track. So they were all sitting there, together on the side of the field. The football game happened, and then later on there was the school dance, and they announced who the king and the queen were, and it was just a good night. It was a lot of fun and so forth. And I remember after the dance, hanging out with the homecoming queen, Carrie Mae, and her friend Diane. And, we went to a party and we're just, having fun, listening to music. And I remember they were dropping me off at my house. So when I got to my house, I said, hey, when you leave, be as quiet as you can. My dad doesn't like when people beep the horn. My dad doesn't like when, people leave wheels and so forth. And like, oh, yeah, don't worry. And what do? As soon as I get out of the car, Diane just hits the gas and just starts spinning the wheels and everything and take off and so forth. So another song from 1983 is Uncertain Smile by The. This is a song that actually was released about a year earlier, and it was a much shorter song, and it didn't, do that well. I was listening to WLIR at the time. They did play it a bunch on there. But when they re-released it in 83, they had Jools Holland, most people know him from Squeeze, did a piano solo. And the piano solo was about 3 minutes of the song. So it wasn't something where he's playing for 10, 20, 30 seconds. He's prominently displayed in this song. I think this is a great song. I think Jools Holland does an unbelievable job with the song. What do you think, Jimmy?
Oh, I love the song. Yeah, that record, Soul Mining. They're two different covers for the album, and I wonder, did one of them have the other version of this song on it? I looked on streaming services, and it's the same version. It has Jools on both of them, so I couldn't even find the non-Jools version on Spotify. I don't know.
Yeah, I know it came out at least a year earlier, so I don't know if it was just a single, if they ever put that one on an album. Honestly, I'm not sure about that. But this is just another one of those songs that 40 years, I still like the song. I have it on my phone. It's something that I listen to. I really enjoy it. If you haven't listened to it, please do. If you do know it and haven't listened to it in a long time, please revisit it and really listen to Jools Holland at the end. What a fantastic job he does with the piano.
And I got a shout out too, though, to This Is the Day. That's another great song that was on that same album. And,
yes. Yeah.
Another song that just holds up. I mean, you still hear it. I'll hear it in movies or a commercial or something. Not that it's like commercial sounding music, but it's just enduring kind of music.
Yeah, Matt Johnson has one of those voices that's distinctive. It's a good voice. When he sings, I think he kind of captures your attention. And the songs all seem to have like a good story. You're trying to listen to the words and trying to understand what's going on and so forth. I did see the open up for Depeche Mode in 1993, I'm going to go with, at the Omni here in Atlanta. So that was a pretty cool thing. I do like unfortunately, Jools Holland was not with them. And then another person that actually played with for a while was Johnny Marr of the Smiths fame. So,
that's right.
Yeah, he had played with them for a bit of time. But yeah, I think it's kind of cool. Last episode, we talked about some recent releases and so forth. I thought this episode, we talk about some, albums from the past that kind of had some anniversaries tying in, with this year and so forth. I'd like to go back and forth as we continue with Music in My Shoes of doing things like that because, it's really about music from all over, from all genres, all different years, all different singers, all different styles. And I just want to be able to share, my thoughts and my feelings with all of you so that hopefully it is something that you can be entertained by. Because at the end of the day, the only reason that you're listening is to be entertained.
You are entertaining.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate
I'm
that.
entertained. I mean,
one
check box so far. Me.
There you go.
I'm entertained.
There you go. I like that. And I definitely like having you part of this. It's good not just talking to myself. It's good talking to a person.
I like to be a person. I specialize in that.
You do a great job.
Thank you.
Great job.
You know what I'm holding?
No.
It's an 8-track.
Oh. Why do you have that here?
I have an 8-track player over here. It doesn't work, but it's a good vintage thing to have around the studio. So this 8-track came with it, and it's not anything that I can listen to because it doesn't work. And it's by somebody named Gene Tracy, Mr. Truck Stop by Gene Tracy, featuring the hit singles Super Toke and Fuzzbuster.
Oh, the hit singles.
You know, back in that era when all those trucker songs were hot, like Convoy and stuff.
Right.
Smokey and the Bandit. I bet you this is from that era.
Yeah, I bet.
Copyright 1980.
Well, again, the hit singles. Don't forget that was part of what they said there. You know, I grew up listening to a ton of 8-tracks with my family. We had an 8-track player that was connected to our stereo, and we listened to a lot of Neil Diamond, the Beach Boys, Led Zeppelin. And then my next door neighbor, he was a couple of years older than me. He's probably more than a couple of years older than me, maybe 4 years older than me. He would rent me his portable Emerson 8-track player, and he would rent me the 8-tracks to go in it. And it was like a couple of dollars. He would need some money and wouldn't need the 8-track player.
A good way to get some lunch money out of the kid 4 years younger.
Yes, it worked. But that's how I learned. I really learned about, expanded on Led Zeppelin through that. A lot of Queen. I'm trying to think off the top of my head some of the other. I got the Cars. I would listen to the Cars first album all the time on 8-track. And it was insane because when I listened to it, I had it. I also rented the headphones. So I would listen to it with the headphones and hearing the music just going back and forth, whether it was the Cars or Led Zeppelin like I spoke about. It was just so cool. It was like experiencing a whole new world. Now, I know I said we were going to talk about 8-tracks in a future episode, but I did get reeled in and decided to talk a little bit about it today. This show is, you know, I have thoughts on what I want to talk about, but a lot of the stuff kind of just comes off the top of my head as I'm going through it, as I have conversations with Jimmy. So I want people to know that's kind of how the show goes. It's really how I want it to be. I don't want to have everything thought out in my head. I want it to be free-flowing so that it's more entertaining and you come back and listen to more. I heard Paul Simon's 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover the other day, and it reminded me of a breakup mixtape cassette I had made around 1985. I was probably about 19 or so. And on this tape, it had Paul Simon, Carole King, and the Carpenters. Some of the songs were 50 Ways, Kodachrome, Slip Sliding Away, and then Carole King's So Far Away, Too Late, and the Carpenters' We've Only Just Begun, Rainy Days and Mondays, Yesterday Once More, and then Hurting Each Other and Goodbye to Love. Because when someone breaks up with you, all you want to do is hear sad songs that make you sadder. Go figure, but that's what I would do. That's it for this episode of Music in My Shoes. Please check out the show notes. I'd like to thank Jimmy Guthrie and Arcade 160 Studios in Atlanta, Georgia, and Vic Thrill for our podcast music. I'm hoping you learned something new or remembered something old. Until next time, this is Jim Boge. Take care.